There we go. All right, welcome back into another edition of the Ohio State of Mind podcast, number 28. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Chen. On the other side of the screen with me is Josh Keatley. Both of us write for Buckeyes Wire, the USA Today College Sports Network, and we're always focused on Buckeye chat here. And the biggest news coming out of Columbus this past week was Brandon Jordan, the defensive line assistant, pass rush specialist coach, is no longer with the program, which is odd because he just joined back in January, and kind of everyone, when he was hired, everyone's like, oh, this is easy for Ryan Day now. He's got Larry Johnson's replacement in-house. Jordan played a little bit at NFL, then opened up a pass rushing school, and then made his way, worked into the ranks and started coaching. Recently was at Michigan State as well. So, we all, when the news came out that he was coming to Columbus, everyone's like, man, this is a great hire. This is, again, it's a succession plan, but clearly something didn't work between Larry Johnson, Ryan Day, and Brandon Jordan, because at the end of the day, Jordan decided that he didn't want to be in Columbus anymore, and he's gone. So, Josh, what are your feelings? You wrote an article about this on Buckeyes Wire today. So, what are your thoughts on Brandon Jordan leaving the program?
Yeah, so I was really upset. This was a guy that I was high on. I tried not to sway one way or the other, right? If I say something, I want to stick by it. And when he got hired in February, this was a guy we talked about pretty in depth on our podcast. Mm-hmm. He had NFL experience. He was most recently with the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seattle Seahawks are a team that is they've always outplayed, their perceived ability as far as pass rushing goes. He has a great resume of having one-on-one drills with some top stars in the NFL, top stars in college football. Like you said, he was at Michigan State. Michigan State was kind of a turn water into wine program there for 2 years ago under Mel Tucker. That one shining year, and that was when he was there. And they got to the quarterback, and they didn't have a whole lot of 5-star first-round talent. So I was really high on it. Like you said, this was going to be a situation where he wasn't going to be the defensive coordinator. He wasn't going to be the defensive line coach. He was going to be the pass rush specialist. And that was a guy that I was ready to basically crown over Larry Johnson. Like if that was a guy that we talked about, Larry Johnson retiring, I was happy with him to be the dude this year. So that's how high I was on him. I don't know why he left. I spent a lot of time today trying to figure out why he left. Couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out if it was his choice, if he was fired, what was going on. Upon my research, you do see a lot. You do see oftentimes these dudes have these clinics that they do, whether it's you see a lot with quarterbacks coaches, running back, it's less likely with running backs, wide receivers, stuff like that, where they have these clinics that they have in the off season, or where they're GAs that they're kind of just getting started, offensive line camp, stuff like that. And oftentimes those camps take off in a way that they don't necessarily need to coach anymore. They can just focus on this. They can take in clients they want to take in, kind of work when they want to. So I don't know if it's a situation like that where his camp, his specific situation is kind of blowing up to where he was like, I don't need this anymore. I don't want to do it. Because you can be your own boss, right, when you're doing that camp stuff. So maybe that's the situation. I guess we'll find out more. But yeah, I'm pretty upset about it. Like I said, I was really, really high on him. He was working with JTT and Jack Sawyer, Caden Curry, and Kenyatta Jackson on their hand movements and their explosiveness off the edge. And all reports seem to say that, those 15 days worth of practice really kind of played a role. Those guys really liked them. So it's a bummer, but what are you going to do, right?
Yeah. It's just odd in my eyes. It's just odd that, you get to work with a couple of guys who are potential first rounders, a couple others who could get drafted as well. I mean, it's hard to go somewhere else and play with the kind of talent that Ohio State has. There's only a few schools across the country that do that. Michigan State clearly is not one of them. It's probably, collegiate wise, it's the most talent that he's ever had in a room. And to me, it's just weird. I just don't get it. I want to find out what actually happened. I need to get more information, like you said, because we don't know whether he was fired or whether he left, whether it was a personal reason, whether he clashed with Larry Johnson or Ryan Day. Like, I don't know. It's all speculation at this point in time. So it's really hard to kind of figure out like what prompted this move, why did it happen, and what transpired behind the scenes that we don't know about, which led to this. So I need to know a little bit more before I can really make a decision on like whether or not that was a right choice or a bad choice. But it either way, I like your sentiments. It's disappointing. I would have liked for him to stay with the program because I thought that he really could have made a big mark on the defensive line, especially not this year. Because like this year, you look at what is there. It's all veteran guys. There's not a lot of work that he's going to do, right? To be honest with you, like little tweaks here and there, hand placement here and there. But his real job would have started in 25 when you're looking at a bunch of younger guys coming in and getting a little bit more play time.
Yeah, I would agree with you that the impact that you're going to see was not going to be with the two deep for this year, right? Well, maybe I shouldn't say two deep, but JTT and Jack Sawyer, those guys, they're not lacking. They're on the more I don't know, rounded out point of the spectrum as far as technicality goes. JTT, I think he does have a little bit more to give. But again, I think that's from looking at it from, hey, I'm comparing him to guys I watch on Sunday, like Myles Garrett, right? Jordan wasn't going to get to that level anyways. And that's fine. But what really excited me was what he could do with Kenyatta Jackson. Kenyatta Jackson was a guy, I spoke to a number of NFL scouts last year, and they all ranted and raved about his explosiveness. And they liked his explosiveness over both Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. So they were like, hey, that's the guy. If you're one guy for the future, that's the guy.
Edric Houston, Caden Curry. I mean, it's just all the young guys. The young guys are the ones that are missing out on it.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought that a guy like Jordan could unlock a guy like Kenyatta Jackson, right? Because it's really, it's easy to be explosive, but you have to have a plan. And the guy like from what you hear about Jordan's resume, he can provide that. I don't think it's going to be – I would like to know more information too, but I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as the Tony Alford situation. I think it's going to be – he's either going to be on an NFL coaching staff or he's just going to kind of do his own thing. If I had to bet, I would bet that he probably walked away voluntarily. I don't see Ohio State – I don't see Ryan Day being the type to hire a guy and fire him 2 weeks later. This is the same guy that, basically has held on to every coordinator every coach he's had, basically to the point where they're failing on national TV and everybody is chanting to fire the person, right? This is not right. It's not Ryan Day's prerogative to fire a guy after 2 days. That's not been his thing. And I applaud him for that. As much as negative as I sounded saying that, I applaud him for that. But that's why I think he probably was more likely to walk away voluntarily.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I didn't think about it that way, but at the end of the day, it's still a loss. It's not a huge loss, but it's a loss. And, I don't know if Ohio State's going to fill that role either at this point in time. I don't know if they're going to add on another, specialist for some other position or maybe fill his role. I don't know. It's not one of the 11 coaches that you can have in the field, I believe. That his impact's not on game day. His impact's during practice, impacts during the spring, impacts during fall camp and all that. But, still, you're missing a guy that knows what he's doing. He's coached up. I believe Aaron Donald's under his tree, and like, come on, you're looking at arguably the greatest defensive lineman ever. You could definitely make an argument for Aaron Donald on that. So, or at least interior defensive lineman. Yeah. So, it's a loss any way you look at it, and it's disappointing for sure.
Yeah, I believe that. So I think that you're allowed to have 10 coaches. So I don't know. This opens up a spot. I don't know what they're going to do with that spot. I don't know if they're going to bring in a guy.
It's hard to say.
There were rumors floating around last week about Josh McDaniels. I don't think that's going to be the case. But, it's just kind of like the Bill O'Brien thing. Maybe this guy leaves and we replace him with someone who's got a little bit more, longer in the tooth. That's maybe can contribute at a higher level and actually do something play calling wise, rather than a guy who's just a pass rush specialist. I do know that Ohio State does have on staff. I can't remember his name. I'm desperately trying to Google it, but my computer's freezing up. They have on staff Alan Clark. He is a graduate assistant. I don't see them promoting him.
No.
But this is a guy that if you look at his resume, he was the defensive ends coach at Southern University. And Southern University, they dominate the SWAC on a pretty consistent basis. Last year he was there. They won the SWAC. They've always been, I'm not going to sit here and act like I watch a lot of HBCU, but, in that Deion Sanders time, everybody did, baby. Right. So, and Southern was always good. They always competed. I thought their defense was always pretty solid. So that might be somebody that can fill in. Again, I don't think they're going to promote him to one of the 10 on staff, but I don't think that it'll be interesting to see that guy's career and how it moves forward.
Right. Maybe Mike Vrabel comes back. What, did he take a role with the Browns?
Well, where's Vrabel at?
I think he took a role with the Browns. Is that right?
That's right.
He took a front office role, to just kind of hang out.
Not high enough to where it wouldn't be surprising if he left. Yeah,
right.
It's not high enough in the Browns hierarchy.
Yeah,
for
he's
him to
coaching
not leave.
He's coaching and personnel consultant for the Browns.
Yeah.
So I mean, he can come home. He can coach the Buckeyes.
Could be fun.
Win a ring. Get out of here and go back to the NFL. He's probably not coming. It's just wishful thinking. I think he left the college game because he's not a fan of recruiting. And obviously, if you're going to be there, you're going to have to do a little. He's not like he wouldn't be one of those. I don't think Brandon Jordan was one of those 10 that would have been on the field anyways, or 11 or whatever that number is. I think it's.
I don't know the on-field rules. I know that you're allowed to have 10. You're basically allowed to have like 10 paid assistants or whatever, and then the rest all have to be consultant at consultant level. There's like tiers to the whatever. He was in the top 10 tier, not so whether that's on the field or not, I have no idea. I think it is, but I don't know. I don't think Ryan Day would hire Mike Vrabel anyways, because that is just putting a larger target on your back. This is kind of getting off topic because we're talking about dream scenarios. But if you're Ryan Day and you're already here, there's, you and I don't really talk about it. Well, no, it's happened a couple times. I think we had Tyler on here and he talked about it too. Bring in Mike Vrabel. I know numerous people in our chat have lit us up about, could Ohio State hire Mike Vrabel? Could Ohio State hire Mike Vrabel? Could you imagine if that dude hired Mike Vrabel and he loses against Oregon? Oh my God. Oh my God. At that point, I would feel bad for Ryan Day. That's a death sentence. I would never hire Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, it'd be rough, but I think at the end of the day, it's not a slot that they need to fill. Mike Vrabel would be great. Obviously wishful thinking once again, but I don't feel like that's that certain position is going to make or break the Buckeyes this coming fall.
No.
So
no, not at all. Not at all.
It
could have made the Buckeye. I shouldn't. I'm not going to downplay it. It was somebody I can't. It's very important that I stay consistent with what I said. This is a guy in February that I said was a huge addition because I believe that he can unlock that second tier. That second tier on the 2 deep as far as the pass rushing moves. So I don't want to sit here 2 months later after he's gone and say, it's not make or break. No, I do believe that it was a guy that could unlock something. He's gone. I don't think it's going to lose them this season, but I do think it's a loss. I think it's an untapped loss, but I don't think it's this is not going to be the reason Ohio State loses to Michigan or Oregon, right?
No, not at all. And speaking of Michigan and Oregon, we've got a little bit of scheduling that came out this week. Ohio State has been selected by Fox's Big Noon for the game against the Wolverines. They also picked a few other Big Ten games. They took 3 total. I saw that College Game Day is going out to College Station for the Texas A&M and Notre Dame game. The schedule. The NFL schedule is getting popped off as well. Look, we all knew the schedule coming in. We all knew what was going on. Really what this is just it's just TV. This is just for where you're gonna find these games. What station are you gonna find these on? The real question for me though, and I saw a poll online. Are you cool? Like, are you cool with Fox continuing to take the best games of the week in the Big Ten and having them play the first game of the day? Or does it make more sense?
So this is something
so you know what I'm saying?
I want to default to you because I could tell by your text earlier, you're going to be much more passionate about this topic than I am. My initial response is I don't care. Okay. My second thought is, I've talked to some people that are more involved with the scheduling and TV and all that good stuff. And a lot of the response that I received was that the noon window is the noon primetime window. People are revolving which I don't know how much this is true. I try to follow the United Football League ratings too, and I'm too stupid to understand what are good numbers and what are bad numbers, right? It's not because I'm an idiot. It's just because that's something that I can't grasp the importance of, right? Right. Just like I can't understand when there's nobody in the stands, how that affects it as well. But the understanding was that Fox wants to make sure that is the window of the marquee game because the trend
they don't want to go against ESPN on Saturday night, right?
Yeah,
pretty much.
Well, when we were kids, and I didn't really think about this, someone brought it to my attention. When we were kids, there'd be one primetime game on Saturday, right? So it wasn't competing with anything else. Now we're seeing a lot of games get pushed to prime time. Maybe it's not noon, maybe it's 7 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and you're seeing a lot of games on the West Coast, especially with USC, Washington, Oregon. Those guys are playing in the Big Ten now, right? So those 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock windows, a lot of people classify those as prime time because they go into 9 o'clock, right? So you're seeing a lot of those secondhand games. So this noon window is getting really close. So it's getting to where the big dogs, there's only 1 or 2 games that play at noon. The rest are all MAC competition, AAC competition, Vanderbilt, right? The lower levels, right? So there's not a whole lot of marquee games at noon anymore. So I don't really have an issue with it. Like I said, I'm an old school guy. I grew up watching games at noon. That's when Ohio State games were. So to me, it feels natural. It feels right. I know that night games help with recruiting. I know that that's a fact. I know that's probably something that you're going to touch on. To me, like I said, I like the noon games. I know that as far as the players go at Ohio State, it's probably about 75-25. If you talk to a lot of those guys, they will tell you they like to get in and play at noon. Get in, get out, bust ass, get the win, rock and roll home. Saturday night games. Yeah. Well, in Saturday night games too, and I can get with this a little bit. Valpro wasn't exactly playing on ESPN, but we had a couple night games, and it was kind of arduous to sit there because your coaches are still waking up 8 o'clock
and wait all
hours,
right? And wait
all day. Those primetime games, I remember sitting there with my cleats for like 2 hours for no reason, just because you're nervous, you got anxiety, you just don't know what else to do. But again, I don't think I'm as strongly opinion about it as you are.
Here's what I would change. Big afternoon. I would not have it at noon. I would not have those games first. I would make them more like midday games. I would do the 3:30 start because then you're creeping into a little bit of prime time. The games goes into overtime. Okay. You can watch that, and you can have the primetime game on in the background or whatever. I just feel like when you take a game, so the 2 other games that they picked already, Texas at Michigan on September 7th, and then Alabama at Wisconsin on September 14th. And that's interesting. I would not actually. I actually think that that's probably the case. Pat McAfee does seem like a really cool guy. He's got some terrible takes, but he does seem like a cool guy. Matt Ray sucks.
The screen name for Matt Ray sucks. It's so funny every time. Thanks for listening, brother. Yes. The comment says, just random cameraman who worked for ESPN Game Day. You're 100% correct. It changed so much. You'll never guess who he said is the nicest Pat McAfee. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure the comment was on
all
there.
All good. But yeah, no, I would push it like a 3:30 start. I just feel like that's a better window. There's a little bit more anticipation that builds up, and it's not building up all day. And I think part of it's like, schools are cognizant of kids partying and,
Yeah.
being, partying all the way through till 7 o'clock, going to the games, right? And they're just like, yeah. Because by that time, I mean, come on, we were all in college, right? What do you do on
Yes.
game day? You wake up and you start partying. Like, no school, no responsibilities. Most people aren't working. You're going to school right now. You go and party. You go to your buddy's house and you sit in his porch and you start slamming natty lights and like, come on, like, let's be real. Like, like that part, like, hey, meet in the middle, right? You're not having the kids drink all day before the game starts, so they're not bringing, like, because like think about it, right? Wake up at 9, 10 o'clock. You're drinking all day. You're drinking till 7 o'clock. You can be rowdy at 7 o'clock when you've got 10 beers down and like,
Yeah.
you're trying to watch a football game. No, you're not. Are you gonna be rowdy at noon? Yeah, really, because you only got like 3 hours to really drink, right? Because like, like when I was on campus, like, my buddy Steve would wake up at 7 o'clock and start playing the fight song first off. So and would
5 o'clock in the morning.
5 o'clock in the morning,
Whew.
like clockwork. He'd have beers for us, so he would blare the fight song in the living room, and we were all just like, oh my God, Steve again. We'd all get up, we'd walk down there, we'd have a beer, we'd cheers, slam it. Most of myself, I went to bed. I was like, yeah, forget this, I'm going back to bed. But like, it happens. Like, people love Ohio State football, and part of that is, having fun and drinking, and I just feel like I think they're losing out on some of the aura of college football by having some of these games so early. Like Ohio State, Michigan, I wouldn't change that. Noon start, perfect. It's traditional. It's always been that way. Big Noon started just a few years ago, right?
Yes.
It hasn't been around for very long, so they can make an adjustment to it. I mean, it's not that hard. So I personally I'm not the biggest fan of having the marquee game at noon. I like to build that anticipation. I watch College Game Day, watch Fox's pregame as well, and then you roll into like a decent game, right? Not you roll into an awesome game. But I don't run TV. I don't know some, like, I mean, I get some of it because I do work in TV. I get some of that aspect of it. I live produce sports, high school games for a local television station in Chicago. So like, I get it. I understand it. But again, most of our games are at night because we're trying to get those ratings. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's just hard. It's just hard. I mean, we do have a couple Saturday games, and Saturday games are, they're usually like, let's see, when so we have one a year usually. It's Loyola Mount Carmel, which are like two powerhouses here in Chicago, and that they usually do like a 1:30 or 2:30 start. They have a JV game that plays before them, so they can't really get started super early.
Right.
But like every other game, 7 o'clock start. All our basketball games that we do, they're later 6:30, 7 o'clock start. I mean, even the Saturday games, they're later starts. So I personally would like to see, those games be at night, but I get the fact that they're fighting for ratings. And do you want to fight with ESPN, ABC for those ratings at night? Probably not. But if you push it back just a little bit to that second slot of games, I think that brings a little bit more anticipation. I think that brings a little bit more juice. It just makes more sense to me.
So there's a couple things. So first of all, I think you might be onto something with the 3:30 window. First of all, as someone who goes to all the games, I would hate that because that means I basically have to miss all the noon games, and then by the time I'm done, I basically miss all the night games. But maybe that 3:30 time slot.
Tell me they don't have TVs in there, Josh, where you can watch all those other games.
They do. But the 3:30 games, they do. But the 3:30 time slot, it might actually work out. But it's going to be interesting because the variable that we have no idea about is the fact that the Big Ten has expanded to include 4 West Coast teams.
Right.
So how are the ratings? So so noon, if you're in California, that's pretty goddamn early, right? But 3:30, that's noon over there. So therefore,
right.
12:30.
That's what I'm saying.
Therefore, you might be able to get additional views, but I'm not smart enough to know those variables and how that works.
Right. Like
I do know.
Say Washington goes out to Maryland, and that game is set for noon. But that's 11 o'clock in Maryland, right? It's noon Eastern, right? That's 11 o'clock in Maryland, right? So you're talking about
and at Washington?
Is it a 3-4 hour? Yeah, Washington, right? I mean, I'm bad with these. Yeah. I'm bad with this time.
Yeah, Washington is 3.
It's a 3 or a 4 hour difference.
I think it's 3.
From coast to coast, it's 3, or is it 4? I thought it was 4.
Is it 4? I think it's 3.
Anyways,
maybe it's.
Because I'm in Central, you're in what?
Eastern.
Okay, Eastern. So then I think there are 3 there. So you're still talking like an 11 o'clock start for them. It's like playing a game at 8 o'clock in the morning. They don't play games at 8 o'clock in the morning out there. Like that is like a travesty to have a team go do that. Like I just don't like I just don't like it. So, I think that, the Big Ten specifically, since it's not Midwest anymore. It's not that. It's national now. So I just feel like, a 3:30 window for their big games makes much more sense than a noon start.
I don't really have an argument against that. What the only arguments I have are really against that primetime slot, because even as you said before, it's not that they're competing. It's not that Fox is scared to compete against ESPN or ABC. It's that they don't want to compete against both, right? Because ABC always has a good game, and then ESPN will always have a good game as well, right? Because there's and they'll cram both. So you'll have, if Fox moves their game to primetime, you're gonna have 3 good games to choose from. You know what I mean? But at noon, everybody's pretty locked in and loaded at whatever big noon kickoff is. You know what I mean? You might be flipping back and forth to the UAB game. You got some money on it. You know what I mean? But you're pretty much locked in. But the 3:30 game, also like you said, it's not like that game is – it's not like that time slot is, taken up by a bunch of superstar games. You could probably do it. The only problem I could see with that is if you have a noon time slot, you give that away to a crappier game, and that goes into overtime or something. You're kind of screwed.
I don't even know. I don't even know if you're screwed on that.
The logistics, I just don't know the variables and logistics.
I mean, maybe it's money. Not every team has lights, because if you're doing a 3:30 start, you're flipping those lights on by 4. You're flipping those lights on by 4 or 5 o'clock, kind of depending on the weather, and you're getting that dusk, and that's kind of what I want. That that aura of that dusk football. I love watching dusk football when it's kind of reddish,
in another
hue, in the background when the sun's setting, and and then as the lights turn on and everything just illuminates. I just love that. I love that, and that's why I would rather see that time slot. But what do I know? Nothing.
I also, from what I've understood, is that Ohio State themselves, a lot of these larger schools, they don't want to do prime time, because that means that they got to hire police, because people still come out there at 4 o'clock in the morning and tailgate. So they have to hire the police from 4 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 o'clock the next day in the morning.
Okay, sure. The largest athletic budget in the country is concerned about paying a couple extra cops. Man, come on.
I've heard it come up. I've heard it come up. Is all I'm saying. Whether it's a legit thing, whether it's a rumor, whether it's just someone shooting nonsense or someone lying to me.
I could see smaller schools complaining about that who don't have the budget that Ohio State does. But if Ohio State's really complaining about that,
well, the smaller schools, I don't think the smaller schools complain about it, because they don't have stadiums to hold 100,000 people, right? So if you go to Athens and they hold 10,000 people,
Well, I'm not talking about, a MAC school. I'm talking like
Yeah.
the smaller Big Ten schools.
Right.
Like a Illinois, Minnesota, Rutgers, those type of teams. Like the kind of the smaller schools inside the Big Ten.
It
I
would
guess you
be.
can add Northwestern,
It would
but
be.
I don't know what the heck Northwestern's doing right now. They're going to play on one of their practice fields. They're going to play on one of their practice fields for the next
Yes.
couple of years. Obviously,
I don't know what we should bring someone. We should bring someone on who has more ties to the ins and outs of what the deal is with scheduling, because I don't know. There's so many variables. I just have no idea. I have no idea what they care about.
Right. I am very excited about the Ohio State Northwestern game in Wrigley Field. I will definitely be there. That is on, that is my favorite baseball team. It's my favorite football team. How do I not go to that? Right.
Mark will be there too, right? Isn't he outside Chicago?
Yeah. Well, he's not. He's like. So I'm technically not in the city, but I'm pretty close. I work in the city.
You're close,
so like I'm like much closer. Mark's like way south. He's about an hour and a half to 2 hours south of the city. So he's a little bit further. I mean, I'm like no traffic, I can get to Wrigley in half hour. Bad traffic, probably like 45 minutes. I would say Mark's drive is about closer to like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, depending on traffic. Because he's coming from like southern, a little bit southern. Because I think he's like in like he's in like Bourbonnais. I think that's where the Bears actually used to practice during their preseason. They've moved it up to Lake Forest now, but yeah. But either way, I mean, like it's like that's weird. I'm not a fan of having that marquee game at noon. I'm just not. I'll deal with it. I'll watch the games. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm still gonna watch those games, but I would just rather push it back, a couple hours and have it at that slot and have that dusk come in, because dusk football is awesome. I love dusk football. So, no, it's just me.
That's fair, man. Like I said, I don't know the variables for why they make the decision.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No,
I don't really have a strong opinion for it. I don't really, if you maybe choose, I'd probably say noon because that's how I grew up. But like I said, if they moved all the games to 3:30 tomorrow, it would change very little with my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, that, it just makes more sense to me. It just does. All right. Enough about the schedule. Let's get into a little bit of argument that we saw from an Ohio State alum and a Michigan alum. Josh Perry and Jake Booty, both are analysts, and I believe it was Stadium that they were on. And they had an argument about who would win. It's a hypothetical argument. Ohio State's national championship team in 2014, I'm sorry, and Michigan's national title team this past season. I think the answer is really obvious. I think this was so easy. This is a slam dunk in my eyes. We'll get to my views in just a minute. Josh, go off.
No, I don't. To me, it's a silly. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say it's silly, because if you're a Michigan fan, I understand why Michigan fans feel the way they do. That's who's saying it. But anybody who's not a non-Michigan fan is going to understand. It's going to pick Ohio State. I mean, the talent that was on that Ohio State team. I know that Michigan had a lot of draft picks, but Michigan also had a lot of guys that were a lot closer to the age of 30. Right? Ohio State had a lot of. First of all, Ohio State had more draft picks off that team than Michigan's going to have, and Ohio State had more guys that were, if you look at the age range, guys that left after their junior year. Right? Michigan had a lot of guys that were in school for 5-6 years getting drafted, which is fine. Not taking anything away from
23, 24-year-olds playing against 20-year-olds. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I'm not taking anything away against what they did this year, but I if you want to talk about 2014, I got to stand up for the boys. I mean, okay. We could take it. We could take it. You want to take it position by position. First of all, before we get too deep into this too, I also we should need to schedule an episode where we talk about the schedule, the strength of schedules for some of these top tier teams, because a constant thing I'm getting barraged with on social media is people bashing the Ohio State schedule because they're not playing anybody. And I feel like that's true, but there's also a reason behind that, and that many blue blood programs follow that blueprint. But I won't bore you with that. I just want to make a side note. But let's go position by position.
I'll hold my comments on that. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up the complete rosters. But while I'm doing that, I did want to make a few points. 48 Buckeyes from that team were drafted. 48. That is 85. That's more than half of the scholarship players went to the NFL. That's nuts.
Yeah, man.
Right? That is absolutely
and not
nuts.
just guys not just guys that went to the NFL, but we're talking star power, bro. There's a lot. These Michigan guys, the star power. You're talking about what? JJ McCarthy, maybe Blake Corum. You know what I mean? But other than that, I mean, Ohio State had Zeke Elliott and Taylor
Michael
Decker
Thomas
has been a starting left tackle in the NFL for 10 years. Michael Thomas has been a top-notch NFL wide receiver for 4 or 5 years. Joey Bosa, no one's better. I mean, you can make an argument he's the best pass rusher in the NFL when he's healthy. Darren Lee was another first-round draft pick. Von Bell has been a top-tier safety for 10 years. It feels like
best playmakers.
Yeah, Malik Hooker was on that team, a first-round pick. Eli Apple was a first-round pick and got snaps on that team. Garyon Conley was a first-round pick and got snaps on that team. Rickle McMillan in the NFL for 10 years. I would classify his NFL career as a success. Billy Price was a second-round pick. I mean, the list goes on, and guys that had very successful careers in the NFL compared to what we can expect with some of the guys on this latest roster. Sometimes it's a little bit of revisionist history, right? Because a guy like Billy Hooker didn't make the largest of impact on that team, and I look back and I just named him, right? Just like there's going to be guys that do a lot for Michigan this year that didn't do a lot last year. And this Michigan team was great. This Michigan team was awesome, and this Michigan team was top-notch. Will Johnson is one of the best college football players. I mean, J.J. McCarthy, for as much as crap as we gave him, he beat Ohio State every time he played. Every time he lined up. We could talk crap about him until we're blue in the face. He beat Ohio State every time he had the opportunity.
All right, so let's go.
Blake Corum.
Whoa. My computer is freezing there. All right, so let's go position by position. So a quarterback, you have G.T. Barrett and Cardell Jones. We're going to talk about two deep here because Cardell obviously filled in for JT when he got hurt in the Michigan game, and then subsequently led the Buckeyes to a championship. When you talk about J.J. McCarthy and Jack Tuttle, I think
I'll give you J.J. McCarthy because they didn't just. Let's give him J.J. McCarthy because
hold on.
Sure.
So J.J. threw for a little under 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, 4 picks. JT in less attempts threw for 2,800 yards, 34 touchdowns, 10 picks. JT ran for almost 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns, whereas JJ ran for 202 yards and 3 touchdowns. This is easy, Josh. You cannot give it to JJ. This is JT, man. JT.
I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible.
Why?
And just because
Michigan. 4-0 against Michigan.
Just because JJ McCarthy didn't throw the ball doesn't mean he can't. That's still a guy who, when he was forced to do what he had to do, could do it. Right? So I'm going to give them the quarterback position. I understand you're disagreeing.
All right.
Statistical production. You're 100% right.
I'm definitely.
But I do want to be. I'm trying to be. I feel like it's going to be such a bloodbath when we go through this depth chart that I want to start out at least showing that I am objective and can at least give Michigan this one thing.
All right, running backs. We got Zeke.
I feel like it's just going to be such a bloodbath. I'm not too concerned about
1,800 yards, 18 scores. You got Corum, who had 1,200 yards and 27 scores.
I don't care. I'm taking Zeke every time.
I'm taking Zeke every time.
I don't think you find one person in the goddamn world. I don't think not one goddamn person is going to take Blake Corum over that.
Nope. I don't think so either. I think Zeke's the easy choice here.
He's a goddamn stud.
He was a first.
He was a stud in the NFL. He's a stud.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Let's be real here. All right, wide receivers, real quick. Devin Smith, 930. He only caught 33 balls that year, but he went for 931 yards and 12 touchdowns. 12 touchdowns. Wow, I did not realize that his numbers were that good that year. I knew it was. I remember him being awesome. Yeah, but I did not remember that kind of production. Wow. Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
So let's just do 3 deep here. Michael Thomas, almost 800 yards, 9 scores. Jalen Marshall, 500, almost 500 yards. They were each a yard short of those numbers, and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And looking over at Michigan, you got Roman Wilson, 789 yards, 12 touchdowns. The next wide receiver, Cornelius Johnson, 604 yards and a score. And then their next wide receiver is Samaj Morgan, 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think this one's easy again.
Yeah, I'm taking Ohio State. Devin Smith was an absolute speed merchant, ran a 4.2. He's immediately the fastest person on the field in both scenarios. Michael Thomas, we've seen what he can do in the NFL. Jalen Marshall was a damn good player too. He kind of gets thrown under the bus a little bit because he left for the NFL draft too early. But that was a dude who did a lot in the middle, was a great slot player, was a reverse guy. Dontre Wilson was a guy that they gave the ball too much to that year. That's for sure.
Sure. Yeah. He didn't deserve that many touches, but
he was the big. Do you remember though? He was the big 5-star hotshot from DeSoto.
He was.
DeSoto?
Yeah, Texas. Yep. Mm-hmm. Everyone thought that he was going to be awesome. Myself included. So
he falls in that category of guys like DeMario McCall and there's a whole lot we.
Oh yeah.
Those little speedsters that don't do anything.
All right, we're looking at tight end here. Nick Mannett, 220 yards, 5 scores. Colson Loveland.
Well, let's
650 and then 4 touchdowns. I think this one's easy too.
Can I make a suggestion before we move forward?
Sure.
In an effort to speed this up, should we just go? Let's divide the categories. We'll go quarterback, running back, receivers. That includes the tight end.
Includes the tight ends.
Yeah, defensive line.
Even with
linebackers.
If I'm looking at tight ends, we kind of.
Oh, dude.
I didn't include the tight ends, so let's do that tight ends real quick, and then we'll move on to O-line. I think Loveland is the clear choice here. I think that's one. Yeah.
No,
Colson Loveland's good.
See, that's crazy. Jeff Hartman and Nick Van Nett were great, dude.
Yeah, but Van Nett didn't do a lot though. Statistically, 220 yards
and blocker and Hartman. Dude, I think you need to go back and watch some Jeff Hartman highlights.
Dude, I know how good they were. I understand that. But I think when you're going to look back on those 3 guys, Colson Loveland is going to have the best career of all of them. I think he's better.
Let me go back to my JJ McCarthy argument. Just because we didn't throw it to the tight end doesn't mean that the tight ends couldn't work.
I don't disagree with
that.
But
either way, if we're putting the wide receivers all in the same bag, you're still taking the Ohio State receivers.
Correct. Yes.
Right.
If we're just taking the pass catchers versus pass catchers, I'm taking Ohio State over Michigan. Yes.
Because I'm not. If you think Loveland is better, that is fair. I'm not going to sit here and act like that guy's not good. He is very, very good. He's very, very good. I think that our tight ends were good that year too, but Loveland is very, very good. But the difference between Loveland and Hireman is much smaller than the difference between the top 2 Ohio State wide receivers and Roman Wilson, in my opinion.
Sure. Okay. I'll go with that. All right. Offensive line. I don't have exact starters or rosters. ESPN is kind of goofing with me here. They're not helping me out. Off of memory, I'm gonna take Ohio State.
Well, hold on.
Can you get one? because we're getting close here to the end, so I don't want to kind of drag this out any longer than it has to.
Let's look. Let me give me 2 seconds. All right, you got Taylor Decker, Jamarco Jones, Billy Price, Joel Hale, Jacoby Bourne, Chad Lindsey, Pat Elflein, Chase Ferris, Daryl Baldwin, Evan Leisel, Brady Taylor. So Taylor Decker, Pat Elflein, those are your big hogs up front. That for Ohio State, and Billy Price, right?
Yeah.
So what do we got for the Michigan depth chart?
Michigan, we got who are their starters? I couldn't even name their starters, to be honest with you. I think Miles Hinton was the starter.
They had Zach.
Amir Herring. I think Colton. Like Jeffrey Percy, Noah Stewart. I'm gonna go with Michigan's line. I just think that like they've done a lot more with their line than Ohio State has traditionally. And I think over the course of especially the last 3 years, their offensive line play has been arguably the best in the country. So I'm gonna go with the Wolverines on this one.
See, I disagree with that too. Ohio State's got 2 first-round picks and 1 second-rounder. That's 3 players that were drafted in the first 2 rounds out of 5. Michigan's got Zach Zinter, and then who?
I know we can't just look at draft picks, though. We also have to look at the continuity of the group and the production that they had. They were the Joe Moore Award. They were finalists for was Ohio. I can't remember if Ohio State was or not. So
no, but how do you measure production by yards?
It's hard,
right?
Sure. And
you just said that JT Barrett had 7 million yards compared to JJ McCarthy.
Right. So they offensively they had 5,700 yards did Michigan, and Ohio State had a lot more.
Yeah, a lot more.
Okay, you convinced me.
The average more, they scored more.
Ohio State. You convinced me. I'm flipping that one.
And I'm not trying to convince you. I'm trying to convince anybody who's listening. If you look,
no, but you convinced me though.
Anyway, you don't have to use a draft. You don't have to use draft picks, but any statistical production you want to use for the offensive line position, because it's one thing if we're talking about the skill guys, like, oh, they just don't do that. Oh, Michigan doesn't throw the ball, so we're going to give J.J. McCarthy a break. No, the offensive lines do the exact same thing. You block, you move, right? That's what you do. And Ohio State did it better in every statistical way.
All right. Let's move over to defensive line. The Buckeyes, Joey Bosa, Adolphus Washington, Steve Miller, Michael Bennett, Rashad Frazier, throw him in there. Jalen Holmes played a little bit. And then on Michigan side, you got Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, who both of them are great players. And then Jalen Harrell, Kenneth Grant, Rashawn Berry. I think this one's easy as well. I think Bosa's the trump card.
Ohio State.
Bosa's the trump card here.
Bosa's great. Bennett was really good.
Michael Bennett was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Like Steve Miller.
Yeah, Adolphus Washington was awesome.
Steve Miller had that interception for a touchdown against Alabama. Like when that happened, I was like, what the hell just happened? I was like, Steve Miller just took that to the house.
Noah Spence was wasn't he like Big Ten defense? He was all Big Ten the first 2 years before he got kicked out to Eastern Kentucky. And then Michael Bennett was also really good. Adolphus Washington was very solid. Also was a draft pick. That's how this whole conversation started too, was draft picks. And all 4 of those guys were drafted. And they were all 4 drafted within the first 3 rounds.
You have to convince you on this one. I agree with you. I'm going with the Buckeyes on this one too.
Now, I do think that Grant Michigan is an absolute stud. So I think Chris Jenkins is a stud too. I think both their interior linemen are awesome. They're probably going to be first round draft. They're probably going to be first round draft picks when they move on. Jenkins was already drafted. I don't remember where he went.
Who's it's Kenneth Grant. I'm sorry. That's my fault. Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. They're still
Kenneth Grant.
That's my fault. That's my fault. So yes. But still, either way, that group is pretty good. All right, let's look at linebackers.
Dude, Joey Bosa was just a dominating. Defensive line is one of those things too, where it's like if you go back and you remember the most dominant defensive lines, they all had that just disastrous, chaos-driven defensive end.
Like 13 and a half sacks. 13 and a half sacks.
Insane. Just an insane player.
Dude was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at linebackers. You got Joshua Perry, absolutely killing it, leading the team with 123 tackles. He had Darron Lee, also absolutely awesome, 7.5 sacks, couple picks. Dude was great. And Curtis Grant, really good year as well. 69 tackles, a sack, a pick. So he had a really good year. And then the trio of Junior Colson, Michael Barrett, and Ernest Hausman, they were the top 3 leading tacklers for the Wolverines team, but they didn't really produce. 3 sacks between the 3 of them, 0 picks. They also forced 3 fumbles and recovered 2 of them, but that's all Michael Barrett. All those extra statistics, it's all Michael Barrett. Michael Barrett's the one that had 3 sacks. Michael Barrett's the one that had the forced fumbles. Michael Barrett's had the fumble recoveries. So when you're looking at that group, those Buckeyes, man, those Buckeyes are damn good, and I think they're much better than Michigan's.
In an effort, if here's how I'm working it, because I feel like I said Ohio State almost every time. If I feel like it's close, I'm going Michigan.
Okay.
Curtis Grant was a good human being,
good,
fun person to talk to, not a great linebacker. Joshua Perry if I asked you after his recruiting, if you look at his recruiting ranking and what he produced, would you call him a bust?
No.
Really? Oh man, that's why.
No, I think he was a 5-star.
A
high 4-star.
Yes, he was. I think he was a 5-star at Virginia, right? He was a big fish.
Yeah.
Big fish. Joshua Perry, a lot of those tackles were 6 or 7 yards deep. You know what I mean? Or the defensive line was so good. I don't remember him having any Andy Katzenmoyer or Raekwon McMillan type plays where he was shedding 3 blockers. Ryan Shazier. Ryan Shazier is the best example, right?
He had 2 seasons over 100 tackles. I don't think that's a bust, man. I don't think that's a bust.
Who?
And a ring. Josh Perry.
I didn't call Josh Perry a bust.
You're talking. I thought you said Josh.
Yeah, I said,
my fault. Curtis Grant.
Curtis Grant.
Yes. Curtis Grant, I would call a bust. Yes.
Okay. I mean, with love, he wore the scarlet and gray. With honor, but
Right. No, he was not as good as he was.
But
he was not as good as he was.
No, and then Josh Perry was a very okay linebacker. I believe you that he had 1 million tackles, but I think that Etienne Sabino, there's probably Joe Cooper. There's linebackers, and someone's got to make the tackles. It's usually the linebacker. He's okay. He's a very solid player. Darron Lee was the only guy in that group where I'm like, God damn, that guy was just absolutely unique,
awesome,
special, chef's kiss. The way he was so fast and so explosive,
sideline to sideline,
that
unbelievable.
You couldn't do it. Wasn't just that you couldn't pull an offensive lineman against Darron Lee because he was so fast.
7.5 sacks.
Yeah, you would offensive. Usually when you pull a guy, the idea is you want someone to go in there because the play's not going there. He was so fast that he would go where the offensive lineman was pulling and still make the tackle before it crossed the line of scrimmage because he was so fast. What he did is so impressive. Those guys do not grow on trees. And it's unprecedented. And that's probably one of the reasons why he busted out in the NFL is because it was so easy for him at the college level because he was just so fast, so explosive, and so quick. With that said, I'll go ahead. I will take the Michigan linebackers because I think Junior Colson was legit special. I think that he was legit special. I know that you talked about his stats, but he was a guy that offenses really tried to avoid. I think Michael Barrett was okay. And the other guy was a transfer from Nebraska, I believe, who was also fairly. They were all. I feel like those guys were all just as good, if not better, than Josh Perry and Curtis Grant. And then Junior Colson, although I don't think he's as good as Darren Lee, I don't think that like I said, if it's close, I'm going to go with Michigan just to make sure that I'm as objective as possible. Because so far I've taken Ohio State every single time except for a quarterback. What's up, David, in the chat? Appreciate you showing up.
All right, so let's take a look at the secondary. We got safeties, Von Bell.
So, but you obviously have taken Ohio State, though, right?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
You're obviously taking Ohio State with linebackers?
Yeah. I mean, the production
I can't believe it's so clear to you.
It's the production. They produce. They had multiple interceptions for each of them. Or not each of them, but they each had a pick. They were turning the ball over. They got sacks. Like, impact plays. Michigan's linebackers did not have impact plays.
They're making those impact plays when they're when Ohio State's up by 50 points, right? Like Darren Lee, okay. Yes, it does. It matters entirely. Because if I get an interception when the other team's up by 28 points, who gives a shit, right? Just like if I get an interception and it's garbage time. The Junior Colson, he didn't pack the stat sheet, but that dude was dynamic. That guy was all over the field. Ohio State was scared of that dude. I mean, right? You don't have to take Michigan because it's close. It's close enough. It's close enough to where you're allowed to take Ohio State.
I'm not discounting how good Michigan's linebackers were. I just like Ohio State's better.
That's fair. I'm just shocked by how easy it was for you to pick them.
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy. All right, let's look at the secondary again.
Let me ask you. Okay, let's look at the secondary.
All right, so we got Von Bell and Tyvis Powell as the safeties. Von Bell had 6 picks that year. Tyvis had 4. You have Doran Grant as a corner, Eli Apple out there as well. Garyon Connolly, Cam Burrows, Armani Reeves. Those are pretty much the backups on that one. And over on Michigan's side, you have Mikey Sainstrill, Makari Page, Rod Moore, Josh Wallace, and Keon Stab.
I believe did Rod Moore transfer before the season?
No, he's got stats.
Was he? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
they had a safety. I'm sorry. I'm confusing him with another Michigan safety.
He's got stats. No, I'm just reading off their. I'm just reading off their stat page from this past year.
I'm just thinking of the other Michigan teams.
No,
I apologize.
If we're gonna pick one or the other, so I'd rather break it down between safeties and corners. I'm gonna take Ohio State safeties, but I'm gonna take Michigan's corners. I think Michigan's corners are better.
The defensive back I was thinking of was R.J. Moten. I apologize. Okay. I'm gonna take Ohio State's defensive backs every time. Will Johnson is special. Will Johnson is probably the best of the group. I'm not dismissing that.
Mike Sainstrill was really good too.
Well, okay, but Von Bell's better, right?
Well, no. I broke it up between safeties and corners. I'm taking Ohio State safeties. I'm taking Ohio State safeties, but I'd take Michigan.
So that's fine. Sainstrill was okay, but Doran Grant was very solid.
Because if we're doing like the position group, it's a toss-up for me. But I'd rather be a little bit more specific as to why it's a toss-up. So I'd take Ohio State safeties, Michigan's corners.
So Doran Grant was very solid, very, very solid. We agree on that, right?
Right. He was good, but not great.
Monty Reeves was also very solid.
Good, but not great.
He got hurt. If you remember,
Right. Good, but not great.
Yeah, he was okay. He got hurt really young, but he saw the field very young.
Sure.
I think he did Ultimate Team Ninja Warrior after he got hurt. He had to medically retire. Garyon Connolly and Eli Apple Garyon Connolly, I believe, saw pretty significant action that year. Both those guys very, very.
I mean, Eli Apple had a great season. 53 tackles and 3
absolute
picks.
Freak athletes. Absolute freak athletes. Both first-round draft picks. So I'm taking them every time. Safety, you got Von Bell, Tyvis Powell, Eric Smith, Cam Burrows.
Don't even need to go past Von Bell and Tyvis Powell for me to make a decision there. That's easy.
And Tyvis Powell I would put him in the same category. And David Powell, one of the best safeties. He was very, very good. He was a very, very solid
underrated.
Ohio State safety.
Underrated, yeah.
He was very, very solid. I would say I disagree. I think he's appropriately rated. I think that him being on the radio every day David just said he's one of the best safeties. Is he? I mean, David, is he? When you say one of the best safeties, do you mean of all time, bro?
No, I think that he's just one of the best. But
he's not even cracking. But I tell you what, Von Bell is one of the best safeties in Ohio State history. That dude was productive from the jump.
Von Bell was awesome. Von Bell, it's like Von Bell and Malik Hooker for me, and then soon to be Caleb Downs. Like that's my Mount Rushmore of safeties, like modern safeties. Modern safeties. I'm sorry, Jack Tatum. I know Jack Tatum. That's why I preface it with modern safeties.
Just making sure.
Modern safeties.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. Malik Hooker was on the team, but I don't remember him playing at all. I think he was.
He didn't. Next year. No, I think he. Yeah, I believe he redshirted that year, and then it was the next year where he just absolutely balled out and picked off like
whatever. I think Von Bell's all. Von Bell's all.
I think he had like 4 or 5 pick sixes that year.
Oh, that next year,
yeah, and then he was like off to the NFL. It's like, okay, dude. It's like
but either way, Von Bell's all I need. That I'm cool. Yeah. I am.
Yeah.
I guess this is my linebacker group where you kind of I don't know. I'm so shocked by that because I think the Ohio State defensive backs that year were just all the guys that didn't live up to the hype were hurt. Amani Reeves got hurt, and the guys that stepped up in for him were first round draft picks. So yeah, I'm taking it every single time.
All right.
With
so
ease.
I think overall we both have more Ohio State picks than we have Michigan picks. I clearly have a lot of Ohio State picks.
Yeah, I only picked Michigan at quarterback and linebacker, and you picked Michigan at defensive back. No, your safeties.
Safeties and tight end. No, safeties and tight end.
Safeties.
That's right. Yeah, right. Safeties and tight end. That's where I see them having the advantage. That's it. That's
interesting. Yeah, so we both agree Ohio State would smush them.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it'd be close.
Ohio State was dogs that year, like multiple times, and they worked everybody, like literally everybody. They beat 8th ranked Michigan State, a 13th ranked Wisconsin, Alabama, and Oregon, and they have their resume.
Once they found their groove.
Like Michigan fans' biggest point is, well, you lost to a 7-6 Virginia Tech team. Well, guess what? It was game 1 of the season. Ohio State just didn't look right. They figured it out, and then they went in an absolute tear and just dominated everybody else.
Well, that's also not necessarily fair too, because Michigan's I guess that kind of goes back.
Michigan didn't play anybody either, though. They didn't play anybody.
Yeah, their out of conference schedule was complete bubble. Yeah, those out of conference games are trickier. Those out of conference games they're just trickier. I think if I remember right, Ohio State went down to Blacksburg too, so they had to deal with the Metallica and the Enter Sandman and all that. That stuff it throws a kink into your plans when you have to play a team that's relatively close to the same caliber of you and talent. You're in their home and it's a new season. Michigan played East Carolina and Army and Navy or something. They played nobody. They played absolutely nobody.
The Virginia Tech game was at home. So
was that home?
Yeah, I do remember that.
You're right. The next year. Yeah, you're right. Either way, I don't care.
And I apologize. That wasn't the season. That wasn't the season opener. It was game 2.
Whatever. It was. I don't care. It was. It's a Power 5 opponent early in the season. When did Michigan? Michigan didn't play anybody.
They don't.
I would still take Virginia Tech over East.
They don't.
East Carolina, Harvard, or whoever. David Davis. Top 5 safeties for us. Mike Doss, Damon Moore.
Damon Moore. Okay. Damon Moore.
Von Bell.
Tyvis Powell. Yeah, I forgot about Mike Doss. He was he was in school when I was in school, and that Trussell championship was a ride, man.
Yeah, man.
Mike Doss was awesome. Mike Doss was the
Yeah, Mike
beginning of
Doss is
Mike Doss was the beginning of comeback. Let me come back, spur the NFL, and let me go win a title. And Michigan thinks that they invented that. They also think that college football started 3 years ago. So, but they claim they have the most wins in college football history. Anyways, Josh, you got anything else? Because we're a little bit past an hour here.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
No, man. I think
that whole 14 versus 23, man, that's a fun conversation. Well, that took off a good chunk. But yeah, do you have anything else?
I know, right? Well, I can't believe that we just. No, man. You can follow my work at Josh Keatley 16. Check out Buckeyes Wire, all that good stuff. We appreciate you listening. Again, guys. Hey, the YouTube numbers, they took a little bit of an uptick.
Ooh.
Still not great, but took a little bit of an uptick.
Hit that like
I appreciate all you guys reaching out. Hit the like and subscribe on YouTube, guys. Please. I had multiple people. I do appreciate you guys reaching out.
Bother me if you want.
Yeah. Definitely hit Mike up. We both answer. I appreciate you guys reaching out and asking me how to listen and all that stuff and all that good stuff. So I know you guys are listening and watching. I can see the views right here. It's just those YouTube numbers, guys. I really appreciate if you could just click on that stuff and make us boost, even if you just have it on the background. But that's it, brother. That's all I got, man.
That's all I got. Make sure you read our stuff on Buckeyes Wire, and we'll see you next week. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.